Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this edition of Ask a Charter Boat Owner. Before introducing Jeff, I want to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Chris, and in addition to being a boat owner myself, I get to work with members of this community, helping to share their stories of adventure, curiosity, and exploration on their boat. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Today's session is being recorded and will be published on leopardcatamarans.com in the coming days. In other words, don't worry about writing everything down. You'll receive an email to this video once it's published. To submit your questions at any point today, go ahead and click the Q&A button at the bottom of this screen. We'll do our best to answer all of them, but if we run out of time, we'll share an email address at the end to submit your questions. And lastly, there's a 2-question survey that will pop up after we wrap up today. We'd love your feedback so we can learn what you liked and things that we could do better in future editions. Let's take a look at what we're going to cover. First, we'll learn about Jeff and his journey so far with the Moorings. We'll talk a little bit about how charter boat ownership works. We'll dig into why Jeff specifically chose the Moorings ownership option, and we'll have Q&A throughout today's session, but also at the end. So Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are.
Hey, so right now I'm at home in South Florida, even though it looks like I'm at Peter Island, but that's thanks to Zoom. So I've been sailing my whole life, pretty much. My parents were sailors. They lived in Long Island, and they had a little monohull. They used to sail around there. Then they had me, and I guess their favorite story to tell pretty much about boating is they brought me on it when I was little, and I cried the whole time. So they got rid of the boat, but they still wanted to sail. They missed that a lot. So they started chartering. They started chartering, I think, around 1987. They used several different companies, and then kind of just ended up at the Moorings. I started chartering as an adult on my own because I missed our family vacations. I had good memories. So my first boat finally with the Moorings was a 41-foot monohull, followed by a 42-foot catamaran now. And I usually try to go about 6 to 8 weeks a year sailing.
Awesome. So a lot of folks who have joined us today are really curious to learn more about how charter boat ownership works. So why don't you walk us through this slide?
Yeah, so the first thing you're going to do is you buy a boat from the Moorings. It's based on their fleet availability and their needs, and they're already pre-spec'd out so that you have continuity across the fleet. So you're kind of buying an already thought out thing, and from a selection of options they have. Then you can buy it either cash or finance. It's up to you, however you go about doing that. You're going to put it into a management program with the Moorings, which is typically about 5 years in length. You're guaranteed a monthly payment every month, no matter what your boat does. So it could be tied to a dock, it could be on a dry dock, it could be in repair, it could be getting hauled out. No matter what happening to your boat, you're gonna get your monthly check, and it's the same rate every month. Then in return for that, you also get to use it up to 12 weeks a year. And when you do, the only things you're paying for are cleaning, and if you upgrade to another bigger boat somewhere else in the world or in your own home base. They manage the yacht for you in its entirety. All of the bookings, the marketing, the maintenance schedule, warranties, improvements, and the most scary thing of all, hurricane prep. That happens totally, you're not involved at all. You don't have to be involved. They handle that for you. And then when you use it, all you're paying is a flat rate cleaning fee. So you have zero operating costs, which means no maintenance, there's no repairs, there's no insurance, and no dockage. And then the last part of it that's pretty cool is the sister ships. So you can use the same boat as yours anywhere else in the world for free, just the cleaning fee. You can also upgrade to a bigger boat, and you pay like an upgrade fee based on what you have to what you want. And you can downgrade for free. So any boat smaller than yours, just take it if you want to try something different, or maybe you're in the Caribbean and you want to go to the Med or something. You can use Moorings or Sunsail branded boats, and you can go between monohull, power cat, and catamaran.
You said something that I was quite envious of. So hurricane season for us here in the United States, my boat is currently on a mooring ball in New York, where I thought it might be safe from hurricane season. I'm 2,000 miles away in Seattle, and even having to coordinate that right now as storms continue to go up there. So a little bit envious of that with your approach. But you mentioned one thing that I have a follow-up question on, and that's the guaranteed payment. You have 2 experiences with this. One is most recently with COVID, where no one was chartering a boat, and even before that with some storm damage. So walk us through how the payments continue to work. And I think that's one of the differentiating factors between the Moorings and potentially some other companies.
Yeah, so I think most people watching probably heard something about Irma back in the day. It was a Category 5 major hurricane that did a direct hit to Tortola, which is where most of the moorings fleet is kept and used. And it devastated the place. It was unbelievable what happened there. And my boat was there and I was far away from it. And my boat survived. So I was very lucky with that. But throughout the entire time, even though my boat was unusable and the whole town was decimated, I still got the monthly checks the entire time, and so did all the other owners. And if your boat was a total loss, you got insurance reimbursement for that. And then now we've had this same kind of catastrophic situation here with COVID, which is nobody can get to their boats, nobody can get in and out of the country, they're not making any money, and I still got the monthly checks every month. And I believe the Moorings and Sunslow are the only company that I've heard of that honored that even still.
Thank you for the background there. The first step that you talked about on this slide is purchasing a boat. So let's dig in a little bit in terms of what the finance process looks like.
Yeah, so these are expensive things. I think there's plenty of people that need financing that don't just have whatever $1 million laying around to throw on a toy. So it's very normal to finance, and the Moorings is set up to make this entire experience worry-free, start to finish, including the financing part, because I think that's probably one of the most stressful things involved. So they will set you up and get you hooked up with a place to get your financing, and they do it all the time. So they have connections with this to get you where you need to be. You're also able to go get your own financing if you want. And it should help, I would imagine, kind of like a rental property, that you're getting guaranteed revenue from this. So, that should be helpful in your favor if you're doing it on your own. But like I said, they have all these tools already figured out. So it's very easy to just go with them. A trick I did this second time around was actually I refinanced the house and then took the cash to pay for the boat to get the lower interest rate. And then I didn't have to worry about the liquid asset requirement. And typically, I think you're coming up with 20 to 25% down, but these numbers change all the time. So you're going to have to check that out for yourself. But when you're getting your checks, the owner payment you're receiving should be more than your mortgage by a substantial bit.
Hugh has a question around the different size of boats. So give us a range in terms of what's the smallest you could buy to put in a charter ownership, kind of that pursuing that option, and what's the largest?
So yeah, my first gut instinct was get the smallest boat possible the first time around, because I wasn't sure. I was like, cut my losses here, get a small boat. So the smallest option they have is around a 38-foot monohull. I think the Med had some smaller ones, but I wouldn't count on getting one of those. So the smallest thing I would say you could count on is a 38-foot monohull up to somewhere around a 50-foot monohull. And in the catamaran range, it's mostly mimicking whatever Leopard's outputting at the time. That usually ranges from about 38 feet also up to, well, I guess 58, but that's a little bit of a different ballpark there. So I would reliably say it's probably like 40 to 50-foot catamarans too that you can look at getting.
And for folks who are trying to determine what size boat they should get, is there any guidance that you could give them in terms of the questions to ask, like how many people might you have on the boat, or where might you go? I know we get into this a little bit later, but from a sizing standpoint, any initial guidance?
Yeah, so I think we'll kind of hit on it later a little bit too, but mostly the thing is you're looking at buying, you got to detach from the boat itself a little bit. You're buying into a place and a program basically. So look at where you want to go with your boat, who's going with you, what accommodations do you want to be able to have reliably, so on like that. So maybe don't think unless, but I guess a flip side of it could be if you plan on keeping the boat after, a lot of people want to buy a boat, they want to have it, but they maybe want to use the program to help pay for some of it. So that could be a different way to look at the whole thing, which is, well, what do you want to go live on? Like if you plan on keeping this boat and living on it, shop for that. If you just plan on having a really nice 5 years of your life, then I would shop for whatever you think is going to be able to suit your needs during the program, whether it's the boat you want or not.
Makes perfect sense. Let's dig in a little bit more into the ownership benefits. And yeah, we'll start there and then we'll talk about why the Moorings after that.
Yeah, sure. So the thing I think I already hinted on a little, and I'll say it a lot, which is the worry-free vacation experience. You do not have, it's supposed to be stress-free. It's supposed to make it easy. You don't have any of the normal things everybody complains about with a boat, which is it's either broken or expensive. Second thing that you get is insurance. I honestly don't know anything about it, and I don't care about it. It just gets taken care of by the Moorings on their own, and everybody got paid for Irma and Dorian. And the way it works is you don't even file a claim. They take care of it. And then if the boat gets damaged or lost, you get a check for it. And typically the way it works out, I think it resets in around August or something. So if you bought a boat in January and it gets totaled in August, you're still going to get the full reimbursement value or something like that, even though you already got all the charter revenue from those months. So it's very much in your favor to try to help you not worry if your boat gets totaled. Maintenance is automatic. It just happens. They have a program that they go with, like a yearly haul out that happens. Things that they know are broken on your boat, they're just going to fix it. If it comes back from charter and someone said something's broken, it just gets fixed. You don't even have to worry about it. And in fact, you don't even get notified of it. If you want to know something, you just request a log and you can get it. But frankly, me, if I have a boat to show up on that's in working order, it doesn't really matter what happened in the past. Kind of that detachment I was talking about. Then if your boat's out of service, this just happened to me, that water maker still wasn't working. So they just switched me to another boat that had a water maker. So I still had all the benefits of what I purchased, even though my own water maker was not functional at the time. And then while you're out on charter, you still get the 4-hour guarantee that's offered by the Moorings with service, which is within the chartering range that they have approved. You know, someone will come fix your boat for you within 4 hours. I've never waited that long myself. You get cleaning taken care of. When you show up, the boat is spotless. It's perfectly cleaned and now sanitized. The food's put away in your fridge. If you provision online, you have fresh linens, and at the end of the dock, you just bag it up and throw it on the dock and walk away, get on your taxi. And you also get the benefits of the owner care team, which I'm going to go use their names. I hope I don't get in trouble for that. But it's Jen Andre and John Keys, and they're two of what's now become my closest friends. So John and Jen Andre heads up the operations side of things. So if you have any worries or concerns, she's going to be the one to go to. And you also have John Keys, who's going to be your go-to guy for your bookings and, you know, how do I do this? How do I this? What if I want to upgrade? I want to go here. And I'll mention it later, but the little secret short notice upgrade, he's super good at that. But I would definitely encourage you, when you get in the program, to reach out and make that personal relationship with them, because they're both lovely people and they want to help you and want to make sure that you have the time of a life.
A couple of questions here on the chat. Anyone who wants to submit a question, just click the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So David wants to know, did you enter the charter program with an end goal of owning the boat outright after charter? And I know we get into options in terms of what can you do at the end, but what's your personal approach been with this boat that you're in now?
My goal was not to keep it at the end of the program. Like back in the day, I mentioned that my family had the boat. So we kind of already figured out the owner thing and then switched to chartering because it was just a much more easy experience. You know, had I planned to go live on it, then I could certainly see wanting to keep it at the end. But for now, I'm kind of in the place of life where I have a real day job. So I kind of just wanted to keep this going as an ongoing vacation getaway.
Perfect, makes sense. Tracy wants to know, what if you don't use all the 12 weeks for personal use? Are you able to rent those weeks and collect money from those weeks? What are the options if you don't use the weeks that you have allotted as part of the program?
So if you don't use all your weeks, they do go away at the end of the year. I don't really think that happens very often, that someone's looking for more, but if you are, you can message other owners and get in contact with other owners and like buy points from someone else. And then you yourself, if you're not able to go and use them, you are permitted to sell up to 2 weeks of your time as long as it's in low season. But that, I personally speaking, I would not count on getting revenue from that. I would just plan on, using it for yourself. And if you can do that, that's a great benefit, good for you. But I wouldn't count on your 2 weeks being sold all the time.
Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit about why specifically the moorings. I know that boat show season is starting to come up again with Annapolis and Miami around the corner and some others after that. Lots of different charter companies as you walk up and down the docks. You've hinted a little bit about guaranteed payments that continue to come even in the face of some challenging situations like hurricanes and COVID. But give us the backstory in terms of why the moorings.
Yeah, so I was chartering about 2 or 3 weeks a year, kind of started to do more than that. And then you kind of look where the break-even point is, about how much are you spending in charters versus how much would it cost you, for owning the boat in the program. And to really calculate that, you're going to want to look at the resale value of a monohull versus a cat, plus, what your monthly revenue is. And also, what time of the year are you going? If you're going in peak season, even if it's only for a short time, it may be beneficial to still consider the ownership program. If you're going slow season for a long time, and most of my friends and family started to be curious about it. So they're like, well, what are you doing? I want to go do that too. So started to have a lot of people more interested and more charters and everybody wanting to go and do it. So it ended up being a good decision for me. My parents have been with the Moorings forever, and I took their word on some of the bad experiences. I didn't need to, the horror stories were enough. I didn't have to go find out for myself, from cockroaches to service calls. And I wasn't interested in any of that because I was happy with the Moorings and I trusted them. There's also, of course, the pride of ownership, right? Like, you feel like you can afford this giant boat that never in your right mind you'd think you'd be able to call your own, yet there it is, it's ours. And if anyone's been there before, you walk up and down the docks and see all the names and you think about like, oh, what do I call my boat? I want to see my city on there. And then you can do that. So that was fun. And then I also wanted to explore some of the other destinations that Moorings has in Sunsail. So I thought that was really fun.
David has a question here, and you hinted at it a little bit, but he wants to know specifically, why not just charter when you want and pay that money versus actually owning the boat and then being part of the program. So I know that there are a couple different benefits, but there's specifically a break-even point.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I got a great example. I'm going to the Exumas tomorrow on a 51-foot power cat, and the charter rate for that was $19,000, and I'll be paying just a couple grand. So I think that's a pretty good example of just depending on what you want to do, when you want to go,
Yeah.
you're not going to, it doesn't cost me $19,000 a year to own the boat.
And then in general terms, I know it's different for everybody, but how many week-long vacations would someone need to do to make their trip, their use of the boat in that scenario break even with the cost of the boat?
If you like going the week of Christmas, like even just that 1 week, maybe the 2 weeks at Christmas, you should consider the ownership program, because those weeks are extremely expensive. Another example would be like if you like to go even in hurricane season and you want to be on the boat for 5 weeks or something like that. Those are times where, the average I'd say is around 3 weeks a year, but to those two extremes, it may be even less.
Got it. So 3 weeks a year, if you're interested in, or you would really enjoy chartering a boat, if you're about to cross over that threshold, and this is something long-term you enjoy doing, consider owning a charter boat. Okay, makes sense. So we're, like I mentioned earlier, boat show season is around the corner. Obviously, you can purchase a boat anytime, but what are some of the research tools that you've used, and what's your approach been to share with folks who are joining us today?
Yeah, so I definitely shopped around and compared offers, even though my parents said it. You don't believe your parents with everything they say, right? So I had to find out for myself. But some other things that caught my attention was, availability. Maybe they didn't have the exact boat I wanted and someone else did. I had the small monohull before, and I really wanted a generator for air conditioning, and I didn't get that. And some of the other companies have more locations and more exotic places that I wanted. So I kind of weighed that all in, and then I think everybody always considers the alternate programs. They have like the percentage based thing. So I kind of took that all into account with some of the other offers I had. I would advise to run the numbers yourself. The sales sheet specifically from the Moorings is very appetizing. It says like value of, ownership and this and that. But I would, and those numbers are true, there's no lie there. I would just take that and translate it yourself into a spreadsheet to find out what your actual out of pocket will be at the end of 5 years. So take your initial investment, calculate the interest, your owner payment, depreciation, and what you should expect to resell it for. And on that note, I'd also say don't overspend, because it's still your boat. This isn't a timeshare. You still do own the boat. And then deciding for me, I was familiar with the Moorings. I talked to the locals actually in Tortola, because I have some friends on there about how some of the other companies operate, and nobody really had a huge problem with moorings, whereas I heard some serious operational flaws between even just the local bases and some of the other things. And then the common worries for me were definitely what happens if my boat gets destroyed and what happens if the moorings goes out of business. So that's where we ended up at the moorings, was because this is a huge high risk investment, and I'm going to choose the reliability and trust of the moorings far more than having air conditioning on my boat in hurricane season. So I'm far away from this boat, as we all would be. So it's half a world away. And as we saw with COVID, you might not be able to get to it. So whoever's caring for you, you really need to be able to trust. And then the Moorings and Sunsail, maybe people don't know, is backed by KKR. So that's money. So when it came to reliability and trust, I decided that was far more important than customizing exactly what I wanted. And some benefits to getting the fleet boats opposed to these totally custom ones that they're going to let you do is, like, if you have a 41-foot monohull and someone next to you has a 41-foot monohull, maybe theirs is a little better than yours or spec'd out, people are probably going to be more likely to use that one than yours, which if you're in a percentage program could greatly affect what you get back. With these fleet boats that are identical, they're all treated equal and they're all fair, so you can count on a reliable thing. And the same quality you're getting with the moorings, which you know what you're getting. Like these boats that they've already figured out, they've got this down to a science, what they're getting spec'd out with, because they know it works. So, and if they've messed up on something, it's their problem anyway. So they're not going to pick something that they don't want they don't want a headache. My last advice would be to go try the moorings. Go on a bareboat charter that's mid-contract, take it out, see what it is, look at what you expect to get. And then while you're there, stop and ask to see a phase out boat. They have them there. They're happy to show you because there's nothing to hide. The boats come out in great condition at the end of the program. And I think you'll see, if you've been on a charter with them, the quality of their operations there is pretty down to a science and well figured out.
There are a lot of questions coming in, which is a perfect segue to the next slide, in terms of how many days can you use the boat? What's the experience like? So I'll let you cover this and I'll have some follow-up questions after that.
So the short answer is 12 weeks. It is based off of a point system. So it's not like you just pick 12 weeks out of the year and you get to go do it. It's a little bit of a technical thing, but I think people may want to know that. So I'll go through it. So there's a few contributing factors on the points. There's high season and low season. In high season, it's going to be the winter in the Caribbean, the summer in the Med. During high season, it's going to cost you 2 points per day. Low season, outside of those times, is 1 point per day. And then at the beginning of every year, if your boat is in contract for the full year, you'll get 42 advance points and 42 short notice points. So if you notice, they're divided by 7. So that's where the 6 and 6, 12 weeks come from. The advance points you can book from now up until the end of your contract. So 5 years away, 3 years away. If you have a specific week, if you want to try to book yours at Christmas every time, you can do it now and you can get your boat. You can pick any boat at any location. And that's an ideal point to use for complex trips. Like if you have people coming from 4 different cities and everybody needs to line up and has delicate schedules, this week it has to be that, use your advance points for that. Make sure that you're getting the boat you want the time you want it. Now the 42 short notice points, you can book those right about 2 weeks before your start date. And that varies by base, but it's around 2 weeks. And you can still pick any boat at any location. And the really cool advantage to these is if there's a boat that's a little bigger than yours, you can get a free upgrade to it. And if you want to get a boat that's a good bit bigger than yours, there's a flat rate fee to upgrade to that. So that's a really cool way to kind of get more than you paid for out of the program. So the tricks to use them, I would definitely encourage talking with owner care, as I mentioned, and use them for last minute getaways, kind of like my Bahamas thing. I got to go. So use the short notice points, saving the advance for a more complicated trip. Just on that note, don't always trust the website for availability. Get in contact with owner care and make sure you connect with them to find out the real availability, because some of them aren't always up to date on the website. And then it's a very flexible program. So like I was mentioning, depending on what you do and when you go, just to show you how the 42 points actually play out, just speaking about advance, you can get one boat in off season for 6 weeks straight. So whatever you're on, if you want to go with one other person and just stay on your boat for 6 weeks, that's 42 points. You could also do 2 boats at the same time in peak season for 10 days, and that ends up also being 40 points. You could also do 6 different boats, 6 different times of the year in 6 different places for a week each, and that comes out to 42 points. So it's very flexible with how that works out.
Thanks for the background and detail there. 2 questions. First one here is maybe a step back to the next slide and the research or the previous slide and the research process. But Paul wants to know, we're coming to the Annapolis Boat Show. We want to purchase a boat next year. Do you have any recommendations about how to make the most of their visit at the show?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I guess okay, so my first step would be go right to a salesperson for charter and find out what is available before you do anything. What you may find is, I want one in June, and you have these 3 choices, but you may find if you wait until like November, December, that there's some different choices, or there might be some little secrets about boats coming out in the future, or something that you might be able to, well, if I wait, I can get that. Oh man, I might want to wait for that. And then maybe you find that it is better to charter for a couple more months or something to get a more ideal boat that works a little better with your situation. So don't rush into it. It's kind of a slow process, and I would definitely just get the relationship with a salesperson, let them know your intentions, and kind of let them figure out the best way to make it happen for you.
And yeah, I guess you could even, to your point, Jeff, you could even start that process now of talking to people, getting the relationships, understanding what's available. So you're just better informed to know what the options are when you can actually see boats in person and know what's available. Mm-hmm. Second question here is really around having access to the fleet of boats and sister boats around the world. So you've described a pretty straightforward, simple process. I go to the website, I pick up the phone and call. Pretty seamless. Does that carry through to hopping on sister boats around the world and in other countries in terms of the efficient process and frictionless?
Correct. The process doesn't change. I think I'll touch on that a little later too, about like some of the benefits of the continuity and across the world. Like that's one of the things I love about it is I do the same process if I'm going on my boat as I do for a boat all the way over in Thailand. It's the same thing. It's same stress-free. I'm just calling someone up, and instead of saying Tortola, I'm saying Thailand, and everything works just the same way.
Terrific. Let's pop into this a little bit more. I know some of these pictures illustrate and bring that point to life, but let's talk about your experience so far with the moorings.
Yeah, so if you tuned in early enough, you might have caught the tail end of that little intro video there. So that's all places I've been. And some of them are here shown on this slide. This is BVI in Croatia and Belize shown there. So that really shows up all my experience that I've had with the moorings. So I'm on a more technical level. I would say overall, the program is great. It's absolutely terrific. I think I'm an extremely happy owner, and I love talking about the program and sharing with people and the whole experience. There are occasional issues and disappointment, as people are going to tell you and you'll hear, but all of my issues have been resolved and all of your needs will be met in time. It's a big organization and they're focused on the bigger picture, but it is a very well-oiled system. Some side effects of that, I guess, could be that there is a slight lack of intimacy when it comes to some service and communications, because like I was telling you, it's a huge thing. So, you're one of many owners that are experiencing the same problems you're having. And while they may not be there to, talk to you one-on-one necessarily about every little thing that's happening, just know that they're taking care of it and they heard you and it will be remedied. You just need a little patience there. So that's kind of my point, is just trust the process. They've have this system designed to operate. It has been. That's why they're doing so well, because it's all thought out and there's a plan for everything. That you may not know all of it, but it doesn't mean that there's not a really good plan in place with someone working really hard on it. They have many owners all over the place, all over the world with all different boats. And chances are, whatever you're complaining about, you're not the first one, you're not the last one, you're not the only one complaining about it right now. There's huge repair processes, for example, like the warranties. One example that just came up was the stainless steel fittings on all of the catamarans or something were rusting. And like, sure, you can complain about it all you want. It's not going to replace all of the stainless steel fittings on the whole fleet quick enough. They're already at the factory dealing with warranty. Who's fixing this? Whose fault is this? They're way past you. So don't hassle them and complain about it. Just trust that it's being handled. And, that's the best thing. So then also when I say trusting the process, make sure you read the management agreement, because everything is pretty clear in there down to a T. And I think a lot of it you just blow through because it's too much. And if you don't understand it, talk to your salesperson. That's what I did a few times. It was like, wait, what does this actually mean? What does this actually mean? Understand, the program, because it will give you peace of mind later. Something that you're glanced over now, it means something. And they're telling you in advance that this is the way it is, and trust it. It's going to work. We're going to take care of you. This is how, examples like that. So in the model, preventative maintenance doesn't always make sense. And this is probably what you're going to read about in forums and hear about owners. I told them that latch was broken 100 times. They never fixed it. Now the whole door fell off. Like, that's preventative maintenance to some extent. And yeah, it's annoying that it's not cared for necessarily at that time, but sometimes it's not worth fixing, because the next charter guest who's going to come do it may break it all over again. So the way that I've seen the program to work is that they already have this all number thing figured out, that they're going to charge the money, whatever they're taking in will cover fixing your boat to flawless condition. Like, they already figured it out. So, don't worry about, oh, well, I'm spent all this money on this and now this latch is broken. That latch will be fixed, but there's no point in fixing it now, because the next guest is going to break it. When it goes to phase out, if you're keeping it, you'll get a whole new door. Like, that's how it works. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to waste time dealing with little nitpick here and there. They're going to just let it get broken, let it get trashed, and at the end of it, buy you a whole new one. That's how the program works. That's how it's figured out. So I, as we mentioned, experienced the two catastrophic phenomenons, Irma and COVID. An example with Irma is September 4th, I think the storm came, and December 1st, I was back on my boat sailing it like nothing happened. So in less than 90 days, the moorings became operational again. They went from sunken, flipped over boats and a mud, half flipped over mess spaghetti of boats to when I showed up there were all of the docks were in order. All boats were neatly tied up, half sunk, half broken, but all tied up. And the two main docks where we were, you wouldn't have known anything happened except there was nothing around you, but the moorings base was all there intact, like almost nothing happened. And then, with COVID, the same thing was my boat. I had no idea what was going to happen to my boat. Are they going out of business? Great. I have my boat tied up to some dock in some foreign country with, I don't know, is there a company in charge of it? Is there management? Is it being cared for, whatever? And the moorings was like, oh, what are you talking about? You're still getting your checks, right? We haven't shut down. Check it coming, check it coming. So it's hard to complain about that, because it's that stability and trust that I had counted on in the beginning. Some other advice I did kind of mention on was, don't get emotionally attached to the boat. I know that's hard, and it's probably even harder if you plan on keeping it at the end of the program. But like I'm telling you, it's going to stress you out constantly worrying about little things that happen to it here and there. Trust me, even if you're keeping your boat at the end of it, they are going to work with you to make sure you are happy with it at the end, and that you love, the experience is good overall. Don't let the little wear and tear over the 5 years it's in the program just trash your experience. Just pretend that you have a boat in the fleet for the chartering experience. And then at the end, they're going to just make it look like brand new and hand it to you to go live on. So either way, if you're just using it as vacations, or if you plan on keeping it, just understand that it's a charter program and you're getting huge amounts of benefits of flexibility and stuff like that. And then you are still going to get a beautiful boat at the end of the program. And part of that is like, this is a huge investment, and there are strangers, the public is getting on your boat to go and use it. They do vet the people, but things happen, accidents happen, mistakes happen, it just happens. So if you can let that go and just enjoy the program for what it's meant to be and the sailing experience itself, you'll be a much happier person. So overall, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can share my experience of taking delivery of a new boat a couple of years ago. The first scratch or ding you get into it, it's I thought it was the end of the world, but
Yep.
But as what I've realized 2 years into it, it's like everything is fixable. Every single thing on this boat. If I maybe take some bottom paint off somewhere in the Bahamas, or whatever. It's all fixable. It's actually designed and engineered to be fixed easily. So once I got past that, I'm like, oh, okay, God, yeah, I can fix this. Question from George here, just back on the points. He says, did I hear Jeff correctly that if an owner has enough points available, they can take out 2 boats at once, say one for the owner and then one for an immediate family member?
Yeah, I've done it before. Like a simultaneous charter. You're not like, you can't really think of it as you're tied to your boat. You're not. You're buying into this pool of a fleet with points. So you can shift everything anywhere you want all around. So that was kind of one of the points I made about, like, if you're only going in Christmas, I know an owner that does this. They use their boats 2 weeks a year, the week of, Christmas and New Year's, and it's the peak season for Tortola. And he wants his boat and another one just like it. And that maxes out all his points, and he's totally happy with that. And that's it.
Let's talk a little bit about your perspective. You've had both, right? You've had started with the monohull, now have a catamaran. Sometimes fiercely debated on the sailing forums across the internet in terms of which is better, but there are trade-offs and benefits to both approaches. What's your experience been so far?
Yeah, so this is going to hopefully seal the point about, what boat do you look for? A monohull is more sporty. It's good for the med. And that's because the med, you spend more time eating out, more time ashore. Most of the marinas have showers. The passages are deeper. And you do a lot of that stern to the wall where, your width really matters and you got to get into tight anchorages. Catamaran is more comfortable. It's better for the Caribbean. And the reasons for that is you're going to spend a lot of time lounging around your boat, behind it. I like to cook many meals on my boat. There's more seating. You have, like, on the Leopards, you have that forward seating, you have the roof seating, and you get the shallow draft, which is benefit for the Bahamas and Belize. And there's actually also more rain protection, so in the Med, I haven't really found as much rain as on some of these Caribbean charters I do, where you want that extra roof and stuff for the rain. And like I was mentioning, you want to choose the boat that you will suit your needs the most on average. So if you're doing most of your trips in the Caribbean like for me, most of my trips are in the Caribbean, a lot of first timers. So people want air conditioning and big bathrooms. I like being able to anchor in shallow water, and I wanted to be more flexible this time than I was with my monohull about where else in the world I can go. It was a little tricky to get to, like, Bora Bora and, some of these places where I have a small monohull and I need at least a catamaran to get there. And the reason I went with the monohull first was obviously the affordability. And I wanted to just kind of experiment with that. And at first it was just like me and, my family or something. So I had small group needs at first, which has since changed because now everybody's like, whoa, I want to go do that too. So it sort of became more of a thing. So that's why I switched to the catamaran, larger groups and more accessibility to the rest of the fleet.
Some questions in the chat here. Peter wants to know, back to the repairs discussion we're having, and it sounds like there may be 2 phases. Hey, let's fix it while it's in contract, so it's good and usable, and then there's this phase out process, which is meticulous and very, very thorough. So Peter wants to know, repairs sometimes on boats, things get patched. Does the moorings contracts call for fixing or repairing to the original state? He asks because he's seen patchwork on mooring charters, I presume, in contract versus phase out. But what's your experience been in terms of the level of repair to phase out?
So the verbiage in the contract is repaired to industry standard. That's okay. And I guess some people have problems with what that's interpreted as. And I did not go through the phase out because I did not keep the boat myself. I did get to see what happened to my boat and see the condition it went in. But from my understanding, it is a bit of a fluid thing where if something's really bugging you, they want you to be happy. Let me just say it that way. They're going to do the best thing they can to make sure you're happy with the condition that you receive your boat.
Makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about how this fits into your life and how you use this this kind of vacation adventure option that exists.
I'm going to use this as a opportunity to say it's a good fit for pretty much any lifestyle. Me personally, I'm high energy, active, adventurous, but then at the same time, I do need to relax while still exploring, and I can't really sit still and do nothing for large period of time. So for me, the chartering in general is just the best of both worlds. It's a great balance of activity. I can move at my own pace. And what I like about the moorings part of it is that they give you all pieces of the puzzle. So like it's already kind of figured out and I can just put it together any way I want. But my point is it's a good a lifestyle for anybody really. And no matter where you're going in the world at any other destinations, you can tailor the experience to be whatever you want. So if you like the high energy type of thing like me, I'm racing somebody to my destination. Like whether they know it or not, they're in a race. I'm getting there first, then I'm going to go hiking, go see all there is to see on shore, going to go have a swim, go visit, anything I possibly can. However, I've also taken low energy people who, want to relax and don't want these crazy activities or something. And then you just plan your trip around resting, sunbathing, having a food and drink in one of the most beautiful places in the world, shopping around and chilling behind your boat. Some examples of these trips was one trip I took a bunch of my colleagues when we were like 23 or something, and one of the best trips of my life. But we were a bunch of hooligans. We tore it up, had a great time. Another trip I took was with some serious divers, and the whole trip was just focused around getting the most diving they can do. And so like it was kind of cool because I typically don't spend time at all these snorkel stops and dive stops, but we did. And then of course there's my parents with my aunt and uncle who they love sailing, but they're getting up there and maybe you have to step back a little and take things a little slower and more relaxing. So it's just my point is you can do whatever you want.
The question in the chat here, just in terms of sailing experience, any formal sailing experience beyond, I know the answer to this, but beyond your family experience growing up as a kid and then being around them?
Yeah, so it's going to sound like I'm getting paid to say this, but I went to offshore sailing school. So I did that when I was around 18 or 19, this is like the textbook thing, right? You go do offshore sailing school, you fall in love with it, figure it out, go buy a charter and buy a boat with the moorings. But that's pretty much what I did. So I did do offshore sailing school, which is a fun, really cool experience just to begin with. Like if you are not sure about any of this, I would advise strongly against just showing up on a boat and expecting to figure it out. I'm sure there's plenty of people on YouTube who say it's doable. Don't do it. Go get taught by somebody who actually knows how to do this, because to this day, I still hear those instructors telling me things in my head that make me perform better while sailing.
Perfect. And the insurance company, if you end up going and owning the boat at some point in the future on your own, always a good thing to have there too. So you work, you've hinted at it, you have a busy job. You also do this. So tell us a little bit about how you support this and how this fits in.
I'm sure it looks like I'm some little rich twat that won the lotto or something, but it's far from the case. Yeah, I do still work full time. It's an extremely high stress job. I was very young when I started there, so I've been doing it a long time. And the gig is basically traveling to major cities all over the country, working huge amounts of hours on a project basis, including weekends. Fortunately, the company gets it. So I get comp days. Basically, if you work a weekend, then you get a day off. So it's sort of flexible in the time where, as long as we get you when we need you, then if it's a little slow or something, we don't mind if you go be a pirate for a few weeks at a time or something like that. So my lifestyle is basically work hard and play hard. And when it comes to my vacation time, I want to be far away from planning, cities, crowds, society, structure, and stress, and all of that.
And one of the ways you can do that, of course, is to hop on an airplane and go use boats around the world. So help bring this picture to life a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm rarely on my boat. I always like to try different things, try different boats, and try different locations. And someone asked about the charter, tandem charter. So that's exactly what that is there. Those were both boats we were on. We didn't all fit on the 48, so we booked that other one simultaneously.
Awesome. So some questions, a lot of questions coming in around the financial piece of this. So just prepping you to get ready for that in terms of best of your knowledge. Before we do that, let's talk about the different mooring bases. I know we've covered this. There's a great map here that brings us to life visually on the bottom right, but tell us what we see here.
Yeah, something I mentioned earlier was a lot of the other people have more locations, but I would stress on the quality versus quantity there. Moorings has good continuity across the locations. As you can see with those pictures on that slide there, they all kind of look similar there because they've figured out that it works and they've taken it and applied it everywhere. So when you show up somewhere, you know what you're getting. It's this very consistent across, your arrival place. They have the provisioning. You're going to get a briefing. You know the boat. You're familiar with it. Tortola is definitely my favorite place. It just has a good local community. I have a lot of friends there. Very, very familiar with the cruising grounds. However, I would love to go to Bora Bora. The Whit Sunday thing sounds nice. Thailand and also St. Lucia.
All right, here we go. So before I hop into this slide here and have you walk through it and then ask a bunch of questions, just one detail on the points and how the time works. Is it first come, first serve in terms of how you can grab a boat?
That's correct. Yeah, it's based on availability. Remember, they have to make money somehow, and they're giving it back to you even if your boat's sitting at a dock. So don't complain about that too much. Understand that this whole thing is operating on the fact that they're selling charters. So don't forget that revenue is most important here, and I want them to get revenue. I am happy to shift a week or two or change a different boat as long as it means I'm going to keep getting paid. I don't really care what happens. I'll be flexible about it. So just keep that in mind that it is first come, first serve basis. And the reason is because you still got to sell charters. Now, as I mentioned, you can book a charter 4 years out, 5 years out. So if it's that important to you, make sure you do that.
Perfect. All right, walk us through this slide, and then I have about 10 questions for you after that.
Okay. Yeah, the simple is these three. At the end of the program, you're going to trade it in, which is keep going. You're either going to sell it, which is get out of the program, or you're going to sail it away, which is to keep it for yourself. If you trade in, the process is basically you go pretend you don't have a boat, buy a brand new boat like new, get the contract all drawn up. And then in that process, they're going to give you a fair market value for your boat, discounted from the purchase price of the new boat. Then they take your boat, the old boat, off your hands, and then you don't worry about docking it, insuring it, when it sells, how much it sells for. It doesn't matter. Their problem. Worry free. And then you continue the program, and you just want to, depending on how it times out between the new boat and the old boat, you may have a lapse of like a couple months, but usually they work pretty good to have it be seamless for you. Selling it is, they're gonna, so you have the ability to list it with Moorings brokerage at any point in time. So I would say doing that maybe like 6 to 12 months before the end of your contract. They're going to help with the price. They're going to list it for you, and they'll show it for you. So again, it's hard when you're thousands of miles away. They're going to do that for you. If you sell it, again, there's that phase out process. So the boat gets restored to industry standard, and then you're going to go there in person and go through the boat in depth and detail with like this whole long checklist and make sure that you're satisfied with the condition.
All right, Martin asks, and we might have covered this, but just to ask it again to make sure we cover Martin's question. What specifically is involved at the end of the contract if you don't want to keep the yacht? I don't believe the Moorings guarantees an exit price when you enter the contract. You mentioned that you don't worry about repairs at the end of your contract. Why not?
Repairs at the end of my contract, at the end of a charter or end of the 5 years, don't worry about repairs?
I think at the end of the 5 years, because your approach is you're not going to keep the boat.
Yeah,
right?
Right.
You're not worrying about phase out at that point because it will be phased out and go to someone else.
Yeah, in my case for that one, I really didn't care what condition the boat was in because they gave me a fair market value without even looking at the thing, and I got that discounted off the purchase of a new boat. So I was like, oh, I think you can get that for it. Good luck. Here, fix it. Hope it looks good. But I did, I did care about my boat, so I did see it. I wasn't told cold hearted. What was the first part of that one though?
The first one was, let me go back to it. It was not having a guaranteed exit price when you enter the contract.
Okay, yeah, that's 100% true. They can't guarantee anything. However, I think if your boat was coming out of the fleet right now, it may be better than expected because of availability.
No one can get
a great time to be selling now. But yeah, obviously you can't guarantee it. 5 years is a long time. Can you guarantee anything? Would you, whatever you do for a living, would you guarantee your customers a price 5 years from now? It's not realistic to think about. Anything could happen. So that's why it's not really fair to say you're going to get this much money if you sell it.
That's right. Question here, just in terms of, I'll give you some easy ones that aren't on finance and the number side of things. Is there a place to get provisioning costs when you are using one of your 12 weeks, fuel, food, et cetera? Maybe you could just give a baseline. I think this is really trying to aim at total cost of ownership. When
Sure.
you look at fuel and provisions, what does that actually net out to be on average per week?
Yeah. So there once if you do a charter with them, even as a bareboat, you can figure out your costs almost to a T. So they offer the online provisioning, which is store.moorings.com or bvistore.moorings.com. And the way I do my trips is I pre-do everything. So it's already paid for. And I tell you, I get to the boat and the fridge is packed. Like I put my waters downstairs and put the little chips and snacks away, but the boat's ready to go. So I've already prepaid for it. There's no money. I'm trying to think if you pay for your taxis when you get there, which is, 10, 20 bucks, whatever it is from the airport. But essentially, I don't think I ever pulled out my credit card at the base for anything because it's already pre-done. Everything's prepaid. And with the moorings, with an exception of power cats, that's what that turnaround fee is for, that you're already covered for the basic cleaning, basic fuel, basic ice, basic water. That's already covered in the flat rate fee you pay for turnaround fee.
Harold wants to know, and if, I guess one is this even possible, what I'm about to ask, and do you know anyone who does it? Are there owners that run crewed yacht charters through the ownership program? Almost like an owner operator type setup?
Yeah, so I think that the politically correct answer there is that's not allowed because of insurance coverage reasons and stuff like that. I'm not sure that it doesn't happen. Like it may very well happen, and there may be a way that it's figured out to do it. But essentially, they offer the crewed yacht vacation, so that'd be sort of like a conflict of interest. So I don't know how advantageous that would be to be doing it. But in a nutshell, I don't think that that's really. I wouldn't count on being able to do that as a way to make a revenue safely. Let's put it that way.
All right, good things for people to consider. So you're on your second contract now with the Moorings. You've met people I know who have had many, many more than that. Give us a little insight into if you'll continue down this journey.
Actually, yeah, it's at the Annapolis. Someone asked about Annapolis Boat Show. I'm on the second boat now, but I met an owner there. They've had 7 boats with the Moorings. So if you do the math on that, that's 35 years. That's a long time to have a boat. So that's the longest I've heard of, but there are plenty of owners that I've met with 4 and 5 boats, which is again 20 to 25 years. So I think it might be happening to me too, which is like it sort of becomes hard to imagine life without having the program and the Moorings. So it's sort of like the vacation of a lifetime. It sounds great, you do it once a year, and then all of a sudden you can't stop going.
I love it. Heidi wants to know, and I think this is actually what will actually end up being a benefit to charter boat ownership, is I understand that recently some major yacht insurers have left the market or raised their rates or become very restrictive on who operates the boat. Has this affected your program at all? And I think the answer is no, because the Moorings handles the insurance, so you don't even think about it.
Correct. Yeah, I honestly don't know a thing about insurance, and I don't mind that at all. Yeah, maybe.
Whenever you're ready, I can tell you all about it from having to go through it every 12 months.
Yeah, as far as I know, like nothing has affected me considering insurance at all, other than there were huge payouts and I wasn't one of them. And somehow they managed to make the payouts in addition to all of these owner checks, even into catastrophic things. So
Howard wants to know, and maybe we can answer this from both points of view, because I'm not sure what he's trying to ask, but he says, do monohulls charter as well as cats? So you talked a little bit about the performance piece of it, maybe touch on availability, and then post contract value, just to answer it from all angles.
Sure. Some people maybe haven't been to Caribbean and Med, and if you haven't, you should do it, just because it's an experience of a lifetime. It's great, but there's a huge difference of demand between the Caribbean and the Med. Like the Med, the catamarans are almost frowned upon because they take up too much room at the docks and all that. So even though maybe in the Caribbean or the Bahamas, nobody wants the monohull, there's a huge demand for it in the Med. And that's part of one of the benefits of the Moorings and Sunsail having such a global reach, is that they have that diversity. So if something did happen in one location, if you haven't been to Croatia, like that base is giant. It's not as big as Tortola, but it's very sizable. It's got to be close. And, it's mostly monohulls there. Sunsail is hugely popular in the Med. So even though you're thinking of Moorings and catamarans Caribbean, they also own Sunsail monohull Mediterranean. And like it's not your problem how much the boat gets chartered or used. In fact, if your boats get used less, it's less wear and tear. So you should hope that your boat stays tied to the dock, not doing anything for 5 years.
And still getting the checks. What would one piece of advice that you would share with the folks who have joined us today who are considering embarking on this journey?
Yeah, it's simple. I think everybody probably gets it. Just do it and do it all the way. And what I mean by that is use this program to its potential. Understand that this is supposed to be a worry-free thing that allows you to go to some of the most unique places all over the world in like a supervised way almost. You know, it's already figured out and the stress is gone. So make sure you get out there, try other boats, try other places, and be open-minded to the world because it's a big place. And yeah, I think that the ownership really is the best way to do it. And I think it really changed my whole thing. I just wanted to go use a boat in Tortola and it was cheaper. And then all of a sudden now I'm like, 4 more years, man, I got a lot of bases to hit.
It seems like the best balance of owning your own boat, but using someone else's boat, right? It's
Right.
that phrase, the best kind of boat is someone else's boat. Glenn wants to know, is there a sweet spot in terms of demand when you look at different sizes of catamarans in the fleet?
So this is like certain people, everybody wants the same boat all at once kind of thing, maybe.
That's right. Like, is it a 42, a 45, well, not a 42 yet, but a 45 or a 50? Where do you see a lot of the folks gravitating
I
toward?
think we're definitely all a bunch of little kids. So I think a majority of us want the newest thing as soon as we can have it. So I think when the 50 cat went into fleet, everybody wanted the 50. Everybody wanted to
Right.
buy a 50. Everyone wanted to get on a 50. And I think that's probably going to be pretty standard about no matter what. I do it. I'm guilty of it. I was like, man, I want to get on that thing as soon as I can. So there's definitely the new boat craze, I'd say. So that's a great thing that, you know, as I was mentioning, you're allowed to book your boat in advance. So if you are buying your boat, get with John Keys and ownership team as soon as possible and say, I want that boat as soon as I can have it. What's my time? And you're guaranteed for that. And they will turn away revenue making charter. Like even if your boat's brand new and going for like $25,000 a week or something like that charter rate, you'll still get it and they'll turn that revenue away because you booked it first.
Yeah. Okay. Some questions here you may or may not know the answer to, but can an American have a boat in the charter program that lives, quote unquote, in the Mediterranean?
Yeah, so this is a bit of a loaded thing, which my best advice would be go talk to a salesperson at the boat show about it, because it's actually a different program. Essentially, it operates the same way, but the trick with that is a lot of the European countries don't allow foreigners to own a revenue generating boat in their country. So basically it's the same program, but the Moorings or Sunsil has to retain title of the boat so they can operate it as a charter vessel. But essentially the benefits of the program and even the financials to some extent are very similar.
All right, perfect. That makes sense. And then I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions here. Peter wants to know, does the Moorings or Sunsail do anything to help connect owners where you can, you know, either get to know each other, possibly exchange points with one another? Is there a list of owners or something to help, you know, connect yourself with others who are doing the same thing?
There is a Moorings owner group, which is done through a web discussion forum, but it's only available to Moorings owners.
Okay. Perfect. And let's see here. Jamie wants to know, and I think we'll leave it at this after this last question from Jamie. You said the normal that the monthly payment that you get covers your loan payment. How many, in terms of calculating the break even on this, how many months of financing are you putting in to that equation? And then how much percentage down are you factoring into that equation?
Okay, so you're gonna get, when you get with the salesperson, just ask for a sample spec sheet, even if they tell you, oh, like I want a 41-foot monohull. Oh, we don't have any available. Okay, well, can I see like the last fact sheet like financial sheet. The last one that you sold, can I just get a look at that? And usually you'll be able to take a glimpse just to get an idea of what that boat works. And that's where it's all kind of figured out. But the down payment is going to be subject to your financing. Usually they know what it is, but based on your independent scenario, it may be up or down, because you do deal with a financial institution. The Moorings is not a bank. So that may fluctuate a little, but what you can get off of that is it's a pretty average assumption of 20 to 25% down or whatever. So you can kind of count on that. They do have the interest written right there, 4%, whatever percent. And it's just not written out like a bank statement. It's written out like a sales sheet. So just take the facts that are on there and kind of rearrange them to get, and then divide it by 5 years and figure out like, it's going to cost me out of pocket this much every year. Everybody's going to tell you this is an investment. It's an investment. It's investment. It is an investment, but you're not going to make money at it. Don't look at this as, oh, I'll just buy a boat and get rich and go sail all over the world. You're going to lose money. It's a boat. This is just helping you pay less than you would have if you were doing bareboat charters. But, depending on how much charge.
Also, just to build on that from my perspective of not being in the program, it just makes the ownership experience or being on a boat easier. Right?
Correct.
You're not worried about hurricanes. I am.
Right.
So it's a great discussion. And for the folks, there are some questions in the Q&A that we did not yet have a chance to get to. So there's an email address on the screen to Katie. If you shoot her a note, if it's directed at Jeff, we can route it to him to find an answer, or we can find the right answer for you. But Jeff, I want to thank you so much for spending an hour with us today. I hope you have a wonderful time in the Exumas this coming week. And for everyone else, please keep an eye out for the email survey, 2 questions that you'll see right after we end the webinar today. Thanks very much.